In this episode, you're going to see me make a set of equal length manifolds for the DW86 Driftworks drift car. Phil contacted me about 3 weeks ago and said, would you be interested in helping out making a set of manifolds for the DW86? We've got a really tight timeline and we need to get the car done. Fortunately, it actually worked out that when he wanted to bring it, I didn't have a car in the workshop. I had time in my diary to fit it in. So yeah, 2 weeks ago, he brought the car here. I didn't touch it over Easter because I was busy, but I've been basically on it now for about 7 days flat out, and we've got it done. It's in there. You know, there's been a lot of tight tolerances and tight constraints, particularly on the passenger side because the engine's so offset. But yeah, hopefully now over the next few minutes you're going to see me assemble this manifold. And apologies, it was all filmed by me. There isn't any flashy shots from Sam, and I've probably missed some bits out. But bear with. You know, I've done my best to try and actually document it because I wanted to document this kind of process and also try and get the car done for when the car needed to be done for. Right, I'll do all that again because the microphone wasn't on. I need a cameraman. Right, so I've made all my collectors up now, and now what I'm trying to do is figure out exactly where I'm going to end up with this collector here, which is going to be one either side. This will make sense. It might not make much sense now, but there's two of them because we've got 8 cylinders, V8, and they're all going to go 2 into 1. So that's going to leave me with 4 secondaries. And those 4 secondaries are going to go into the exhaust system as either side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So I know how long my primaries and secondaries want to be, roughly. Again, a bit of give and take, but we know roughly where they want to be. So I've added those 2 lengths together, and I'll go from this furthest away cylinder here, which is the one right at the front, and I kind of add that up with my tape measure, tailor's tape, and I kind of give myself a loose run down from this primary here, underneath, past the steering column, and it gets me to about here, where this piece of heat shielding ends. So yeah, I'm going to go for putting the collectors about here. That's what I've basically worked out. And I'm starting in the middle of the car because I've got nothing to aim for. I've got no idea where to put collectors. I've got a rough idea where they might go, but I don't know. So I'm giving myself a starting point. I've got the exhaust that's on the car now. Now I'm going to lose this because it's not the same length. It's not the nicest. We can do a better job. So I'm going to lose that. So I don't need to worry about the whole centres of these. But what I do need to worry about is I want to get these collectors as far over as I can. So if I show you, I want that basically there. And I want it as close to that chassis rail as possible because that's going to give me more clearance around the gearbox and bell housing basically. I don't want it to touch the chassis rail obviously, but I want it to be, I want a bit of a gap, but I want it to be as far apart as possible. So I've already measured that gap out basically, and that leaves me with whatever that is. Can't remember now, I think it's 660 hole centres on these collectors. Then basically what I'm going to do is I've just got 4 45-degree bends. I'm going to have my 2 2-into-1s, they're going to merge in, and then they're going to have that other collector at the end there with them 2 15-degree bends. So I'm going to make that into a 2-to-1 collector, which will exit in 3.5 inch to match up with the exhaust we've got on the car now. And then I'm going to fix these at 660 apart, and then I can get this up on the car basically, and that gives me something to aim for basically. Once I've got them collectors in place, I'm not going to put the flexes in to start with because that makes it a bit trickier because then this collector can move around. But I'm going to bear in mind that I need a good 4 inches to put that flexi in both sides. So I've got to leave 4 inches straight. I can't put these right in front of the bends because then I'm going to have nowhere to put a flexi in. So I'm going to leave that length like that, and that leaves me with enough room to put flexis in when I'm done, basically. Add the flexis in after. So yeah, they're going to go there. I'm going to assemble this whole thing. The floor is pretty flat. Of course, the engine is offset. I need to remember that. I can't measure anything off the set using the engine as a centre line because it's not in the centre. and actually the floor kind of runs downhill a bit. It looks like it's going uphill, but it's not. It's actually going downhill. So again, I'm pretty sure I can make this all up as a flat section. I'll tack it up like that to start with, put it up and see what it looks like basically. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Get these set apart where they want to be, get that collector made, assemble it all, and go from there. Right, so we've got that merge collector made now, that big 3" into 3.5" one. Then I've got my bends cut down and my merge collectors shoved on the end. And again, it's all kind of loose on the floor. I mean, I've had my straight edge out. I've been using my concrete straight edge as well, which is a fantastic tool. Got it all right so that my hole centers are correct, so that they're going to sit perfectly either side of the gearbox. You can just about see, like there and there, either side of the gearbox. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack all this together. These are a bit trickier to tack because the ends aren't completely flat, basically, where they've been swaged out. They're going to be a bit trickier to get nice and square, but that's this is one of those situations where I have to remind myself it doesn't have to be, you know, 0.5 millimeter perfect. It'll still work just fine. So yeah, get them tacked up, and then what I plan to do is on the back of the gearbox here, there is like a mounting bracket. Don't know what it's for, but Phil said I can use it for the exhaust. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of flat bar across. I might have to put a bend in it because it's maybe a bit too high. It might actually come out like bang in the middle of where I want the exhaust to be. But yeah, I'll do something so that I can then shove this whole exhaust section up under the car, and I'll just have to support one end of it. Hopefully that end, that'll be easier. Then I can leave that end free. I can square it all up under the car, and then I can begin to make this bracket weld on or bolt on. So then I've got one fixed point on the car, and then I can begin the exhaust system. And then obviously at some point I'm going to have to see about attaching it onto here. So yeah, let's get some welding done. Nearly home time. Bit of chilli on tonight. Chilli for tea. Okay, so I've got that like piece of flat bar welded in underneath, and the idea is obviously just have something to mount the exhaust to. What I did forget, and I've just remembered or just realised, is the engine's actually solid mounted, so we don't really need any flexies in the exhaust there because the engine isn't going to move. We will want something. I mean, the exhaust is rubber mounted, which you obviously want. You need some give in it. There will be a lot of give in these primaries, especially when they're warm. I think I'm probably just going to make it up, see how I feel about it when it's done. Obviously the exhaust system will be pretty heavy, and the car obviously gets a lot of abuse, so it needs to be reliable. So if we need some kind of flexible joint in it somewhere, we'll put one in. But obviously I've solid mounted the exhaust up until the back of the gearbox, so there's no point in having a flexi in realistically before that, because, you know, as the engine moves, obviously the gearbox moves with it. So yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But what I've come to now is I've obviously mounted I've got this in. It's kind of got a bit of give in it, which is good. So it's not solid completely. Because the engine's offset, what we've got now is we've got a problem here, is we can't fit two 2¼ secondaries in between the chassis rail and the bell housing of the gearbox. I'm going to have to basically put one in front of the other. I'm going to have to make one, put this bend shorter, and actually put one kind of over the top of the other. It maybe doesn't make sense, but I can't run them parallel like that. There basically isn't the room. Right, this should make a bit more sense now. You can see what I've done. I've got one bend kind of shooting inside the other one. So the primary length, the secondary length we're after is 17.5 inches. These bends, I've cut one of them shorter, obviously, so that it sits inside the other one. They're different angles. That's a 45. This is a 30. I'm just using off the shelf bends basically. And we've got an inch in the collector there. So we need still another 3.5 inches, which is actually going to work out okay, because if I kind of do this one-handed, if I put another collector in there, where that kind of rear one's going to go, I'm not sure how well this is going to come across, but where that rear one goes, that's about 3.5 inch gap there. So I'm going to need a small bend that's going to leave me with about 3.5 inches. That's going to leave that collector there, just under the cylinder head, which might be a bit tight for making the primaries, but we've got to start somewhere. You know, we might be better off to push this bit further back down the exhaust, but you just don't know. You got to start somewhere. We don't know what's achievable until we try. And then, yeah, I need another 3.5 inches on that one, which is going to leave kind of in that sort of situation. So, yeah, that should work out okay. In fact, actually, with this one, I'm almost tempted to literally just have a piece of straight, because that leaves it in quite a nice position, shooting straight up towards the cylinder head. So I might try that to start with, just a piece of straight on there, and see how I get on with that. And again, I can always adjust this if I need to. Basically, what I'm going to do, put that piece of straight on there, get the collector tacked on, get that little bit of bend on there, get the collector tacked on, then I'm going to drop the car down and actually mock up that primary in the plastic ice engine works. just split me fucking jeans. That's what you get for working on in Mini. Climbing in and out of it. So I've got it to the point now where I've got basically 4 primaries mocked up. I've got the other 2 on the floor here. I've got to now basically just commit to one. So I've got to really pick the most difficult one, which is going to be that one right at the back there, that's, you know, shoved right up against the bulkhead and squished in between the inner wing. I'm going to make that one, get it in, and then basically just work forward from there in terms of where they begin to compromise each other. So this one needs to stay as tight to that as possible in terms of where it comes over the chassis leg here, or this one won't fit in, which goes in there. And then it's very hard to show this, but yeah, that one goes in there right next to it. So if I don't keep that one as tight as possible, this one isn't going to fit. And if I don't keep this one as tight as possible, obviously that front one's not going to fit either. So yeah, I'm just going to commit to that rear one now. Okay, so I've got that rear primary basically all tacked together. Now this is, in some ways, the easiest one, in some ways the hardest one. It's the hardest one because it's the furthest away. It's like, it's hardest to actually hold and stuff because it's sandwiched between the inner wing and the engine block and cylinder head. But it's the easiest one in that obviously these collectors move at the minute because although they're attached, they're not solidly attached. So I have to be accurate, but don't need to be mega accurate. But you've got to start somewhere, and it's the easiest to start with the rear one because that's the most difficult, basically. Get that one out of the way, and then everything forward of that should be easier. So what I've got at the minute, where it steps up from 1 7/8 to 2 inch, I've basically swaged it up and slotted it inside. Now, what I need to do now is actually mark around that, trim it off, basically draw around that with a Sharpie, pull it out, trim it off, and then swage it so that it just doesn't drop inside. So that way you get the full effect of the step up in size, basically. That's my plan. And then I can tack it onto the cylinder head. You see I've got it wedged in with a piece of cardboard at the minute to kind of force it against the, and I've got like a smaller piece of tube inside the cylinder head that goes inside that piece of tube in order to centralize it, basically, so that I know it's in the right position on the cylinder head. So yeah, I'm going to draw around that, trim it off, tack all this together, and then that then becomes solid. Then I can start working on this second primary, which is going to go into the other collector. As you can now see, I've got the third one in, and that'll just shove up there. I'm now getting to the stage where obviously I can mock up this last one, which should be the easiest one because it's kind of got the straightest run. But I'm going to have to think soon about, will this actually come out of the hole? Obviously it's a pretty slim gap. I'm hopeful that it will. I'll obviously have to take the secondaries off in order to actually get it out, which means taking that main piece of exhaust off, which I don't really want to do. So what I'll probably do, in order to kind of make this as seamless as, or as quick as I can do it, is I'm going to leave it as it is. I won't weld them all to the head. I mean, I'm going to tack them all on, obviously, but I'm not going to weld this up or weld up the slip joint sections, because I've got these slip joint section, not the slip joint sections, the bit where it steps up behind. On this primary, I've actually been able to weld that, but on these two, I haven't. I don't know why I didn't. That was just a bad decision making on my part. So yeah, I've still got those to weld, and I'll obviously have the head flange to weld. But I'm at the stage now where I've kind of got last one to do, and it goes something like that. So you'll join me in a few minutes where I cut some bends up. This is going to be a relatively simple one, other than for the fact that, again, I've got to make it have two different diameters. So yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult, but we'll get that one in. We can get them all tacked onto the head flange, because this one's not tacked onto the head flange. And then, yeah, it's just going to be a case of moving straight onto the other side. Once the other side is done, I'll be able to take this off along with the rest of the exhaust and actually weld up these step-up joints in here and weld up the head flange, and then obviously hope it all still fits, because you do always get a little bit of movement with the welding, basically. Depends how good your fit up is. But yeah, there might be a little bit of tweaking, but we're making good progress. Okay, so with that side all done, here's a better view from the underneath. What we've got is the collectors that are laid over at that angle rather than at this angle, if that makes sense. So they're kind of flat rather than straight up. And we needed to do that. I originally had them like that to start with. But the reason we needed to do that was because there just wasn't enough room between the engine block and the chassis rail to get that rear primary in with the length we need. Again, it never looks anywhere near as tight on camera as what it actually is, but that rear one really was tight. Now, we've got more room on this side, but what we do have is the steering column in the way. So we've got that link from the steering column to the steering rack, and it is pretty tight to the engine block-ish, and there is a decent amount of room, but not loads. And realistically, if we're going to get the collectors in anywhere near the same place, which they don't need to be in exactly the same place, but we do need the same secondary length. So we're going for 17.5 inches again. We've got 17.5 that side. If we're going to get 17.5, realistically, I've got to go for them like this. The benefit is we've got much more room between the engine block, or kind of up with the cylinder head, and the chassis on this side. So I'm not that worried that if I put the collectors at this angle, that we're not going to get that primary length in. It just makes it more difficult to actually get all the primaries to go in together. But that'll become a bit more obvious when I actually get these on. Right, so you'll see where I've ended up with this one. I've basically just run it as a straight line, straight up. Now, whether I'll end up needing... Basically, I'm trying to do this quickly, so I'm using an off-the-shelf 30-degree bend, which has left me with a bit of a gap between this collector and the other one. I've got about an inch gap there, and ideally I think I'm going to want to close that gap up. So I think I'm going to want more of a 35-degree bend, just to kind of bring that up, or put a little slither of a bend in here where I've extended it, or something. But we'll see. It's just that that's quite low, and I'm not sure if, based on this side's a little bit higher, and I only just made it work. I only just got, I think it's 16.5 inch primary. I only just got it to reach. This one might need to go up a little bit more in order to get it to reach. But again, doing what's easiest first. So now I'll drop the car down, and that'll be the first one I mock up basically. I'll see if that'll reach to the cylinder head from there, 16.5, because it'll just be that one. I mean, I potentially could do that one there. Maybe, we'll see. I'll get the car down and have a look. Find myself on my tiptoes working on a car that's on the lift. You just literally just put the lift down. So that's going to go something like that. Yep, so you can see that's going to work. This one's going to be very similar to it. The one next to it is going to go up and down. This front one, as we know, is just going to go straight in there like that. And then that middle one is just going to probably have a little bit of a bend in it to get the length in. And yeah, it's going to work out okay. This side is going to be easier. I worried that I was getting a bit ahead of myself by saying this side was going to be easier because there's more space. The steering column, I didn't know how was going to affect it, but actually it has made it pretty good. So yeah, I'm going to mock them all up just so I know for sure. Then yeah, get cutting some bends up. Right, so that's got all them in. Again, they're all pretty rough. They don't like match up exactly as they're going to be because obviously the collectors are still moving a little bit on this side. Although it's now fixed on the other side, there's still a little bit of movement in them. So until I get one primary in, the next one along doesn't really matter that much how accurate it is because the position of it might move a little bit. We're going to have to move that brake line, but that shouldn't be an issue. It only wants to move like an inch up or down, basically, or left or right. So yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. I mean, I might be able to get a little bit better, but again, for how easy it is to just move a brake line, you may as well just move the brake line. Yeah, so I'm now going to start cutting these up. I've tried to work these out, again, as roughly as efficiently as I can. Again, walk the line of get the job done as quick as we can, but also do it as good as we can. It's a balancing act. Yes, I could stand here all day refining these, making them look prettier, whatever, but realistically, we're looking to get the job done. So yeah, I'll start with the back one. I'll work out what bends I need and then get cutting. Right, so now I've got all the head flanges and all the steps welded up, and I need to put them both back on the car and figure out where I'm going to put the spring tabs for all the collector slip joints. Each one of these joints will need its own spring, essentially, to hold it together. I mean, you could argue you could get away with just having one, because they're all attached to this, or two, sorry, because they're all attached to the same head flange. So really you just need one to join each collector onto the manifold, but two is always better, you know, one per primary basically. And given that these, even though they're all equal length, they're all a different amount of bends and bend angle, we're better off, you know, they're going to be pulling and moving in different directions. So if we want them to, you know, seal up, we're going to need to put springs on all of them. And then of course we'll also need springs on this end as well, on both of them. So we've got a lot of positions to mark, and we need to make sure that we get them in a good position, or it's just going to be impossible to actually get the springs on and off. This side probably won't be so bad, but this side's probably going to be a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, I'm going to put them back on the car now and figure that out. So yeah, you can now see these secondaries. Again, they are the same length, both sides, and you can see kind of how tight it is around the bell housing. One of the things that Phil said was, please leave as much room around the bell housing and gearbox as you can, because, you know, if we need to change the clutch or whatever, kind of mobile, it's, you know, space becomes pretty paramount in those areas. So we've got as much space as we could possibly get. But again, I'm very happy with how that's come out. I've added flexes in onto this section here, purely because even though the engine's solid mounted, there is still a lot of vibration, and it is all on slip joints, but I'm very much belt and braces. For the cost of a pair of flexes, if that saves you having to remove the whole thing to repair a cracked weld or whatever, to me, they've paid for themselves. So that's a bit of a no-brainer. I've added in some mounts for the hanger brackets, sorry, because I think Phil's probably going to remove this off the back of the gearbox. Again, probably just because probably not the best idea to mount the exhaust off the back of the gearbox, but yeah, so we've added some brackets in. At the minute they're just tacked on, because I'll leave Phil to weld those on when he fills in the big hole that he's got on the inside of the car. Right, so I've cut off the old Y piece that was on this existing exhaust, and then that just leaves the Y piece that I made. So what I need to do now is create a bend, because obviously there's a bit of a bend involved in getting onto that other section, and then I'm going to need a joint in here. So I think what I'll probably do is take this section off, stretch it out so that it can have a slip joint on it, have my bend, short piece of straight, just push in, and then that's that, easy peasy. Right, so this is what we've ended up with. We've got equal length primaries and secondaries. You can see just how tight it is on this side. Now, you know, that's the challenge with equal length primaries is, especially on something like this, can you actually, you know, there's a big distance between that front cylinder and that rear cylinder, but they need to actually end up in the same position down here. And there isn't a huge amount of space to actually cram all that in. And sometimes you've got space, but not really where you need it. So yeah, I'm very happy with how that's come out, that side. It's really compact, but really works actually. Nothing is compromised, and very rarely do you get to the end of a job and say to yourself, I wouldn't change anything if I was to start again now, and I genuinely wouldn't change anything on that side. And it's the same for this side. It's a lot, you know, you can see I've had to come up more, but that's because we're trying to clear the steering rack link, which again, Phil did a good job of trying to get that as tight over to the block as he could to try and give me room to get the collectors in. And again, in that different orientation, obviously I started out with the collectors in that orientation on the other side, but ended up having to flip them to parallel. And again, they're vertical on this side, and that has worked. We've managed to get it in. And to be honest, I'm so happy, I'm so pleased with how it's come out. There's so few compromises. One thing that Phil said was, leave as much space as you can for the plug leads, because the headers do tend to cook the plug leads. I've tried to bear that in mind as much as I can. Obviously it's not, you know, it's not been easy. You kind of have the space you've got at the end of the day, especially on a cylinder like this one where getting equal length in, it's actually a case of, it's almost a straight run, right? And then you've got to try and get the same length in on this rear one, and the only way you can get the length in is by adding lots of bends. So it doesn't always mean that you've got the room to kind of manipulate in order to, you know, get the plug leads where you want them, or get the clearance on the plug leads where you want them. But yeah, I'm super happy with how it's come out. So what I'll do is now I'm going to put the car up and I'll show you what I've done underneath. Check out my amazing camera skills. I should be a cameraman. Does look fucking sick though, doesn't it? So, thanks for watching. Hopefully it's been enjoyable. These are the kind of jobs that I really do enjoy to do. A couple of, you know, a year maybe. Don't always like them to be a rush job. It's preferable if I've got, you know, I can kind of do it in my own time. But also I always think I work best under pressure a lot of the time. So yeah, really happy with how this has come out. Did my best to film it all, so let me know what you think to the footage. Obviously Sam will work his editing wizardry. Probably make it look better than it is. But yeah, probably don't email me if you've got something like this, unless it's something really special. I mean, you don't have anything like this, obviously. But I don't really do these jobs. I'd say I just do them a couple of times a year. So yeah, I'm not really interested in doing exhaust and things for other people. I really just want to crack on with the Mini and eventually maybe even the Princess. So that's where I'll see you next time. Back on with the Mini. Thanks for watching. I'm done.